皆さんこんにちは. Today I'm with a white guy. But it's not just a white guy. It's a white guy that lives in Japan!
You like Japanese so much? Sayonara.
はい、私、白人です。
Okay, 自己紹介して。
自己紹介。はい、じゃあ、皆さん、こんにちは。ライアンと申します。よろしくお願いいたします。
So now you know he actually speaks Japanese. A little bit of background. I don't know if you want to explain it. I'll just go real fast. But,
Go for it.
You've been living in Japan for 4 years?
Yes.
You actively work in Japan?
Actively work in Japan, yes.
For a kind of Japanese company, pretty much a Japanese company.
Yeah, it's a gaishike, so foreign company, but it established recently in Japan, and it's about 50-50 Japanese, 50% foreigners.
So I feel like, if we're talking about Japan, if we're talking about a gaikokujin foreigner experience in Japan, then Ryan is like the most suitable to answer questions because he has those kinds of experiences. So today I am going to be asking him some Japan assumptions, true or false. False. Basically based on your own experiences, your own testimonials of what you've experienced in Japan, not just like as a foreigner, but just, daily life in Japan, how your interactions with Japanese people are, just like the assimilation of Japanese culture as well, and things like that.
Okay.
But these are things that, I have seen are definitely trending on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, like topics like that. So are you ready?
Let's get into it.
Alright. Hello, editing MATOKA here, and before we continue with the video, I just wanted to make sure that you notice that there's something new. The subtitles, and it's something that I've been wanting to implement for a while, both English and Japanese subtitles for language learners who end up watching my videos. The only issue is the Japanese subtitles are not perfect. Are they even great? Not really. The way that it splits up the conversations and, especially when we talk over each other and stuff like that, it's not going to be very good. So let me know if you like the subtitles. Make sure to leave a comment below because, I put a lot of work into actually going in and trying to edit, and it's a really long video, so nothing is going to be perfect. But before I got too many comments about the subtitles not being good, I just wanted to address it. Hopefully it's okay, and if you do want subtitles in future videos, make sure to let me know. Okay, back to the video. True or false? Dating is easier as a foreigner in Japan.
Ooh. Yes.
It is? Okay.
I think, but depends on what type of dating. If you're just gonna do having fun dating, or going out to eat dating, or actually looking for a relationship, I think that depends on the level of easy. So I think more that beginning, and then the latter gets more and more difficult.
Right, yeah. I definitely have heard of the 3-date rule. A lot of people are looking for marriage as well, seemingly, right? Like, the fun part, definitely. I think that's kind of universal everywhere. It's easier to find people for more casual things.
Yes.
And people are more open-minded in that sense. But once you kind of are like,
yeah,
oh, serious? Like, that's when shit gets heavy and much more difficult, right?
Yeah, and you have a huge city like I'm from Tokyo, so dating is at the first couple levels is hard because there's a lot of people that you can choose from.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Finding the right one is difficult.
Any advice if someone is trying to date in Japan? And I'm thinking bare minimum here, because granted, audience-wise, I feel like a lot of people are going to be kind of new to Japan in general if they're pursuing dating. So if you're thinking first steps, what is that? Is it making a friend group and trying to find people through that? Is it getting apps and trying to be more active on that?
First thing I would say is if you can speak Japanese or not. And
yep, that's true. Okay. Yeah, let's get down to real basics. You kind of need to speak Japanese.
Yeah.
That's true.
Knowing Japanese culture, being able to speak Japanese, the communication is really, really important, especially for Japanese people. Obviously looks is really important, the first step, but if you can't have a conversation, it's just going to be silence. What I've seen also is apps are totally fine to do the first look, I guess. And dating through friends and things is also really good, but I feel it's a bit more difficult because it's such a big city and things. It's easier to kind of find people on the apps, and apps are not people don't shy away from them, especially recently.
Right. And I do want to add for, you know, knowing Japanese for dating, I think there's a different way to like converse culturally compared to like, you know, America or most other places where small talk is more prevalent as well. I feel like that makes it very difficult as a foreigner to kind of like connect when you're dating and or just connect in general, just because small talk isn't really a thing. So you need to really like learn the social cues and learn how to build a conversation in like Japanese culture, or like culturally it is very different.
Exactly. You have to know the culture and the trends and the things going on, because if you start talking about things outside Japan, they're gonna be
or if you just talk about the weather, you're boring. But if you talk about what you did in high school, you're cool. Make sure you remember what you did in high school, fam. That's gonna it's gonna save you.
High school. Yep.
All right, next one. You speak Japanese, but no one understands you because you're a foreigner.
True.
Okay.
True. So the background behind this is based on your look, right? Even though I'm like white, and so I'll speak Japanese, and I would say my Japanese accent is not very strong in the sense of being like weird sounding. So Japanese people have told me that, oh, it sounds pretty good. But even then, it's asking this question or saying something, and then the person listening is like just tries to speak to me in English, and I'm like, no, I think I'm saying it right. So then I'll ask it again in Japanese, and then they'll just reply to me in English. I don't understand what.
And I think a lot of it is that first impressions too. Like if you yourself are entering a restaurant and you know you're looking pretty like not from Japan, they are going to at least try to speak more English, or you know, navigate as they would when conversing with a foreigner, essentially, right? The appearance, that kind of context is stronger than, oh, they can speak Japanese. Like it takes them literally like more than a second, like a minute to kind of like figure out like oh, fluency, oh, it's there, like
exactly. Or maybe they're thinking, how much can this foreigner speak Japanese? So if I start speaking natively, then maybe they won't catch up, so they'll speak English, which is like really considerate, and I think is really good. But in some situations where we need to, you know, communicate quickly, get things done quickly, it's like just talk to me in Japanese first, and if I don't get it, I'll let you know.
But then sometimes don't you feel like, oh wait, like if they do speak English, it's like, oh, I get the foreigner pass. I think there are situations where it's like, oh, thank God they do speak English. Like restaurants and stuff, I feel like because it's just very like face-to-face value, like there are, and it's so tourist inundated, they're just like, okay, we're trying to just speak with any foreigner and stuff. But like if you go and maybe like open a bank account or something like that,
so
I feel like it's very
bank account, dentist, it's like,
even if you are a foreigner, I feel like they're gonna very much push Japanese. Like, so like in those cases, you need to know, essentially.
Yeah, in those cases, if they do speak English, that's where
then it's like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't have to figure out how to say heart disease in Japanese.
Exactly.
Or something like that, right?
Exactly. But then it's also like the English they use is
not good.
Not good, or not
right. It takes more of a minute to understand what they're saying, you know?
I've had experiences where I'm trying to go back and forth. I'm on my Jisho, my dictionary on my phone, and I'm just like typing the words, showing the word. Having the vocabulary is the difficult part. In English, I would be able to easily say everything using the background, but in Japan, in Japanese, I have to say like some kind of scenario like this, and then they can try to figure out, but that's not super effective. So.
I remember when I was at the doctor, they were trying to get like my background history and stuff, and I was like, God, like how do you say tonsillectomy in Japanese? Like there's freaking no way I'm gonna be able to do this. So I'm like pointing to my throat, and he's like, oh, you got your throat removed? I'm like, no, it's still there, obviously. So when they do speak English, it's like,
godsend. But
It's really nice.
very like situational dependent. True or false? You always have to pay the tourist price in Japan.
Ooh, that's a new one. That's a good one. So that's a new thing coming out, right? Some governments and city governments are thinking about doing that because they've heard, a lot of stories of going to, I can't remember which castle it was. It's very cheap for foreigners, especially for like Americans or Europeans.
Granted, like as this is filming, like the yen is low.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like it's looking better as we keep going through life, but right now, as you all probably know, everyone who's actually been to Japan this year, yen is very low. Things are very good for people who are earning the dollar right now.
Some governments have been thinking about, well, let's charge tourists the higher prices because they can afford them, and it helps our our economy and things. So I look like a foreigner or like a tourist, right? So I'll automatically be asked to, okay, here's a foreign price, tourist price, and I'll be like, I live here.
Right.
How do I handle this situation right now? So having to prove that you live there, and then you can pay the local price. It's good.
So do you think a lot of it is based off of assumption too, or like let's say I go in, I'm just speaking Japanese to them. Truth be told, I'm very Japanese passing. Well, I am Japanese, but I don't live in Japan, right?
Yeah.
But I'm Japanese passing, right? So a lot of the times I was able to kind of just like have a little more freedom, and like the assumption was, oh, this guy is Japanese. My questioning is, are they like carding everyone like they are in a bar to see if they're 21, or is it based on like assumptions, looks, do you speak Japanese, that kind of thing, right?
It is based on the assumptions and looks, I think, especially if you do, so for you'll be fine, right? I don't think you have to. There you go. Prove anything when it comes to efficiency and things. Maybe they'll start checking everyone at the front door of a restaurant or the area that they collect money. But I think those rules are starting to be figured out and pushed out over time.
And just to clarify too, because I feel like a lot of people get very triggered over a tourist tax, being like, oh, that's so unfair and stuff. From what I've heard last, at least, it's not necessarily they're going to be drastically increasing prices for tourists, but they'll just be either minimizing prices for
locals.
Japanese locals, or they're going to figure out a system where it just because the dollar is stronger and other currencies are stronger, just to even that out a little more, which I don't think is a bad thing for just Japanese people in general, because they do desperately need that on a Japanese salary. Like if you look at the statistics, it's not looking great. Getting better, but not looking great. So anyone who has qualms with that, like, be a little empathetic.
Exactly. Having that
get your head out, yo.
Baka.
This is a good one. Okay.
What?
True or false? It's not worth it to work for a Japanese company.
Can I say like depends?
You can say it depends. Okay.
Because there's pros and cons for both. Depends on your lifestyle, I guess, and what you like. And why I'm saying this is, like, if you want to be more like a Japanese person, working at a Japanese company is really good. You're able to get many experiences because they have rotational programs within the company. So, this year you'll be focusing on Eigyo or sales, and then you'll be, next year you'll be in HR, and then next year you can be in, well, I don't know about year by year, but that kind of plan. You can go to IT, you can try different things that you want, staying within the same company. So you can get skills without having to, be fired or try hard.
You can experience different departments without actually having to move companies each time and go through the job hunting process.
Right.
Because also, like, you're very unlikely to ever be fired too. Like, you're able to cultivate more experiences, even like moving around and stuff like that, so you have a little more freedom.
Exactly. Reasons not to work for a Japanese company is, the cons are, if you want to have any flexibility, if you have your own ideas and your own creative way to do, that's not really the environment that allows for that. Of course, people will listen, right, to what your ideas and things. It's not like they just ignore you. If you're more of a creative person, I feel it doesn't fit very well. Of course, I speak from IT area. Other places I'm not not too sure.
Especially if you're pursuing a Japanese company as a foreigner who's had job experience in other places. Culturally, it is going to be a little more difficult.
That's a good point.
And it is going to be not what you're technically used to. You know, coming from a Silicon Valley startup background myself, it would be a complete 180.
It definitely is. Unless you go directly into something very similar startup, a Japanese startup that wants to be like Silicon Valley-esque in Japan, then okay,
but then
maybe you have the same
I think
situation,
those influences too are going to be much more like it's an international company. It's more of a, you know, there's more foreigners in the company too, just like not necessarily run as much as a technical Japanese company too. A lot of it is shifting your ideas of what work is if you're trying to get into it and you have had more freedoms in the past, right?
Yep.
So definitely pros and cons. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like the transition at first. If they feel like they're someone who's had more freedom, works more remote, can kind of just log off and be like, peace. That doesn't translate well.
Yeah. Especially if, you know, you don't want to work overtime. Let's go into that. Like everyone has heard of the, you know, can't go home until your boss goes home, right? Type of thing. I would say that's not, at least in the IT area, that's not a huge rule. People will go home when they want, but you do feel the pressure of, well, I have 1,000 tasks that I need to do, so I will just continue doing them until 7, 8 p.m. And that's when everyone else is kind of going home. So let's go home at the same time. Doesn't have to be just boss, but your other coworkers and things like that, right? So
it's also very dependent on your own work ethic too. If you have a different way of working compared to like the Japanese norm, that's very difficult because they really kind of want to not individualize you, you know, it's like running a machine essentially. So you're a component and they want you to kind of do things the way that they have been done before. So innovation can be a little stifled because of that, I think too. And like, you know, as Ryan said before, like getting those new ideas out, much more stifled because
really hard.
Yeah. And that stems from a cultural aspect too. So it's hard because you're not out here to change the culture.
Exactly.
Even if you want to. When you've been a part of another culture that's much more free thinking too, it's like, okay, I wish Japan could be a little more free thinking. I wish, you know, this applied to this.
The number one way to change that, through my experience, is your communication skill. I think I mentioned it before. If you speak Japanese really well and you're able to negotiate and communicate what you want to say, to be able to change someone else's mind, it's the same as we do, right? In our in English, and right, our native language. So if you're able to do that, you can make change, because it's always about just convincing the other person to do something. Right?
True or false? Japanese people don't like foreigners.
Again, that depends on the person. So
give me a true or false, man. Let's hear it. Don't wimp out on this.
False.
I agree with that.
I would say false when it comes to personally. So each person personally has no issues like with foreigners, especially like younger generation. Yeah. No problem. Everyone I work with that are below 25, or I guess below in their 20s, have no sense of like, oh, you're a foreigner. That even thinking, right? It's just like used to it. But collectively as a group, once someone in power may say they may not like a certain type of person, then that means everyone kind of follows. So then it looks like no one likes foreigners.
Right.
In that kind of sense. But personally, they may not think themselves like that. So that's what I've seen so far.
Japanese people really lean on stereotypes. And, you know, what they have, like the bad experiences that they've heard from other people. But when you meet a Japanese person face to face, especially if you can communicate, whether they're speaking a little English or speaking a little Japanese, like there is no barrier or any kind of animosity whatsoever. It just has to do with certain like past situations and things like that. And also, you know, what government says is very much not the collective identity
It's
of
not
the
at all.
Japanese people. And I think, you know,
The government, it's its
we
own
hear
island.
we hear a lot of things, like government talk. When you're abroad or you're not familiar, you're like, oh, well, that's all Japanese people speaking, right? And
Yeah.
that's 100% not the case. But yeah, I agree. False. Like,
False,
Japanese
definitely
people
false.
are very welcoming to foreigners. It just gets harder the longer you stay there. Like, apartment, let's not get started with that. Like, finding a
Exactly.
place, no.
There are rules and situations where foreigners, where that would be maybe considered true, right?
Yeah.
And also in dating scene, it can
Yeah,
be
yeah.
true, right?
Mhm.
You know, you want to date someone like you. So
Mhm.
if you're non-Japanese, then why?
There are a lot of differences. The Japanese person hasn't like studied abroad or, you know, doesn't kind of have those experiences that you can tap into. It does make it more difficult unless you are like so immersed in Japanese culture that, like, you know, you're better at kanji than 90% of Japanese people. Like, if you're that kind of dude, then you're okay. But
Or woman?
or woman, sorry. Whatever you identify as.
Yeah.
True or false? It's hard to make friends in Tokyo.
True. That I can say right away.
Okay.
It's so weird to say, right? Like, it's a huge city. There's people everywhere. Should be easy to make friends, right?
I don't know. I feel like cities in general, it's hard to make friends. Like, you would think just because there's a lot of people that it would be easy. And each city has their own like quirks and stuff, right? But I think it's just because you're also like in it together. Like, a lot of people have the blinders on more.
Yeah.
You know?
Going their own way, their
Yeah,
own path.
yeah.
So I would say meeting people is very easy. So that would be kind of considered easy to make friends. But
actually
making
being
good
friends,
yes,
different,
is
yeah.
completely different.
I would also say, as a foreigner, it's really easy to meet other expats.
Mm.
But a lot of them are not there for that long. So you're meeting tons of people, but it's always like they're coming and going, that kind of thing. So if you're permanently living in Tokyo, it's hard to find other permanent residents that
Or like you.
are like you and that are able to foster a relationship where you're seeing each other a lot too. Which I get. It's like people have their own timelines, they have their own jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But friendship too may be a little different culturally in Japan. I don't know.
It is. It's more, in my opinion, or what I've seen, is more high level.
Mhm.
It's not as deep
yeah.
when
yeah.
it comes to, comparing it comparatively to like a Western culture.
Yeah.
What we would think is like a deep relationship would be probably more having those deep conversations or
Talking about your feelings,
Talking
that
about
shit
your
don't happen.
feelings. No. And
Don't talk about your feelings. Oh,
Yeah.
cringe.
Yeah. We don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that. So it's more just like, again, with your friends, your Japanese friends, it's like, what'd you do on the weekend? How's
What did you do in high school? What sport did you play in high school?
Yeah.
You know.
oh, I'm gonna go meet my junior high, my
Yeah.
elementary
Who'd
friends.
you date in high school?
Yeah.
Who'd you give a love letter to in high school?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
more,
it's just a bit
definitely
different.
a little more superficial, I would say.
Yeah, but again, everyone's different, so everyone would say something different. But in general, this is what I've heard from my Japanese friends themselves, because I've asked these questions too.
And I think as a foreigner too, you're able to kind of like dig a little deeper, like, because we're just used to having more emotional conversations, and I don't know, it's like,
Yeah, and
not that they're going to be receptive to it. They're definitely not going to
Mm.
emotionally dig deeper just because it's culturally irrelevant. Just, it doesn't happen, right?
and again, the communication, right? So
Yes, yeah, definitely
if
communication.
they don't speak English at a really high level, then how do you speak deeply? Well, you have to speak Japanese at a really high
Yeah.
level to go down into that. Now, I've been there 4 years. I've studied in the U.S. and I studied a little bit in Japan. I work. It's still super hard to have a deep conversation
Yeah.
in Japanese. So
Well, a lot of the words and phrases aren't necessarily
no, they don't
deep
translate.
either. They don't translate
Yeah.
over the same way. So
Again, that cultural part. How
Yeah.
do you say this thing that means the same in English at a deep level, right? So direct translation, not like that, but it's more like these words, these phrases, you know, when you say you like someone, ski, right? Ski this. That's at a love level. It can be, right?
Yeah, but it also
But you don't
could just be like a crush too.
It could be a crush, so it depends on the situation, the word, everything. So
Yeah.
that's really, really difficult to get into.
True or false? It's illegal to be fat in Japan.
Illegal.
Actually, kind of true though.
I mean, I think when you go outside of Tokyo, people are much, obviously a little bigger because obviously the situation allows for that, right? There's more driving. It's not as much like walking and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. I really think because of the culture and because of the food, because of the natural exercise you do by slaving going to work every day and walking from your house or riding your bicycle to the station or riding your bike all the way to work, standing in a jam-packed train, you're not sitting down, you're not doing nothing.
I do also want to say that if you work for Kaisha, you do have health tests every single year, I think it is, right?
Yep, once a year. Mandatory.
Mandatory, yeah. And so that also kind of, I would say, kind of regulate
Well, you get penalized if you are
fat.
Yep, pretty much.
I mean, not just fat, but like
Unhealthy.
unhealthy essentially. Because they're not just saying like, you're not just walking in being like, oh man, you fat. Like they're doing all the tests, right? They're like liver function, all that kind of stuff. So if you have a bad liver, that's also a penalty.
Yeah.
If you have kidney issues, also a penalty.
Because these results get sent to the company.
Yes.
And the company analyzes them and they can do various actions. They will never fire you, but they will put you on a health plan. They will tell you, okay, you need to start doing these things if you're going to work at this company. They can reduce your salary if they think you're not fit to continue like working because you're unhealthy, which is like super culture shock, right?
Super crazy.
But it's, I guess, good to be fit and to be healthy. It's an incentive, I guess, to not just let yourself go.
Well, it's almost like a forced incentive almost though, which in America that don't fly.
No.
That's against the rights, against the Constitution. Yeah, I would borderline say true, kind of illegal to be overweight just because of those checks and balances, especially if you're working in certain companies.
Yeah, but also when it comes to dating, weight is a big factor when it comes to finding the person you find attractive.
But I think that is kind of changing because I've heard that like big girls in Japan are getting popular. Those are all of my assumptions.
Assumptions? Questions?
Questions, assumptions. These are like assumptions, I think.
Would you see yourself coming back to Japan and doing any of these, working in a Japanese company, working for a company?
I would not work for a Japanese company because that sucks. No, I would definitely I need to work on my own terms, especially as like being a freelancer for the last couple years. It's very much like I have my own methodology for work, which is very streamlined for the processes that I do for creation, but that definitely would not transfer over to media companies and things like that, just because they are working with so many more clients and they have their own way of operating. And a lot of that is kind of just like creative preference too, which don't really know if I want to get on board with that when I kind of have my own way. So hey, if you're a Japanese or American company trying to bridge that gap, hit me up. I'm open for work. Hit me up on LinkedIn, all the cool spots. Put in a good word for me.
Will do.
I should just make like a banner that has like my socials on it, and
then just
you
put
get,
it up.
or like I'll make a T-shirt and I'll just have like my social. And when you're
there you
walking
go.
around like Shibuya or something, just wear it.
Okay, I'll wear it for you. Yeah.
It'll be like when they paint shit on the cars to advertise stuff.
I'll
but
have
you don't
your
a car.
I'll have your big face in the back.
No, I want my QR code.
That's not fun. Okay.
Everyone's gonna be pointing the camera at you. Yeah. Okay, we can do that.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for answering these assumptions, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experiences.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Zyren7, XYREN7. Put it down
Right there.
Right here. Right
Up
there.
here.
Up here. Right there.
Oh, I'll put it vertical in Japanese.
There you go. There
I'll
you
put
go.
it in kanji. Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah. No one's gonna be able to find you. Our next video will be in Japan.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Please come and let's shoot it.
Yeah, we'll do street interviews.
Street interviews.
You'll be the one talking. You'll be the one interviewing people. I don't want to do it.
True or false?
恥ずかしい。恥ずかしいよ。
Japanese people would run away from me.
They'd come up to me, but I wouldn't know what to say. So
Yeah, they would.
I'd be like,
Or,
好きですか?私は好きですか? All right, we're done with this. Bye bye. またね。
またね